Welcome to Our Power is Within. I'm your host, Chazmith, and my mission for this podcast is to inspire you to take your power back and to realize that you are the healer that you have been looking for all along. I truly believe that we are all capable of healing in mind, in body, and in soul. So, today is, episode number 2 of the Joy series, if you didn't gather already from the title. And we have a fun guest today who has actually been on the podcast one other time. I love her dearly. She's just one of my favorite people. Her name is Vanessa. Y'all might know her as the founder and creator of the Haven membership. If you don't know her yet, you will. And then I suggest giving her a follow because she always puts out fresh, awesome content all the time. And her membership is nice. It's packed with so many wonderful tools and guidances to help support us on our self-healing journeys. And I know there's a lot of guest speakers and live classes available, which is really supportive. And speaking of live classes in the Haven, guess what? I am actually going to be a guest myself. I get the privilege of jumping in and teaching no other than a movement class. Yay! I'm so excited, actually. So yeah, I'm going to be teaching one of my playful movement classes to all the members of the Haven membership. This week, actually, this is going to be released on May 13th. And I believe it's the 15th that I'm going to be teaching a class, which is really exciting. So for now, it is a one-time guest spot that I will be doing, and we will see what happens from there. But I'm excited. I'm excited to share something I'm passionate about with more people. Speaking of movement, I am also still teaching once a week in the Healing Dudes program. That's going really well. I'm loving it. I feel like every time I am done with class, I can feel my sacral energy buzzing, and it feels really juicy and good. So it feels right. So if you want to, join me, you know where to find me in those classes, with more to come soon. Stay on the lookout. I'm actually going to be offering a class on movement that will be catered towards anyone who is still mostly bed or couch bound. So if that is you and you are like, wow, I'd love to incorporate some type of movement, but I'm not really sure what to do. I'm still bed bound and couch bound. This will be for you. So stay on the lookout. I'll obviously probably drop some information on the podcast, and I'll definitely put some information on the Instagram channel. If you don't follow it already, that's at Our Power is Within. Okay, so we have Vanessa today. We are going to once again deep dive into the topic of joy with a nice little twist and a nuance where we are going to actually be focusing on grief and joy in the midst of grief, because Vanessa is actually a grief expert. So I'm really excited to share this one with you, and I really hope that you enjoy it. Internet gone. Crystal clear. All right, Vanessa, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So today, for everyone who's tuned in, Vanessa and I have gotten together so that we could continue the Living in Joy series. And I'm really excited to have Vanessa here because if you're not familiar with her work, she's actually trained in grief and helping coach people and guide people through overcoming grief and those hard emotions. And so I think this is going to be a really exciting conversation because we can talk about joy and how to still hold space for joy even in the midst of grief.
Mm, I love that. Yes. I'm happy to be here and share all the things about joy and grief. Um, so, where do you want to start?
Well, we're actually going to start with the simplest question, which is I want your explanation or your definition or interpretation of joy.
Oh, that's a good one. What's my definition of joy? I'll start off by saying that joy for me, especially while healing, was never this like big, bl- you know, uh, massive experience. When we talk about like all this elevation, joy was very simple. It was a moment in time where I could be present and access another emotion like joy, which for me felt playful. It felt grace filled. It felt safe. And yeah, for me, that is joy, is where I can connect to something more. Maybe it is a little bit of elevation, but it doesn't need to be this big, huge experience. So joy started very small for me. Yeah.
You said joy could be safe, could be feel safe. When you were first sick and you were just starting off on this self-healing journey, did joy feel safe at first?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I will say that just like how safety regulation presence needs to be cultivated, so does joy. And so joy became this skill that I had to relearn in a sense. There was a part of me that knew what joy was because I had experienced it before, but it didn't feel as accessible. And so it became this intentional practice of uh, building it, cultivating it, getting curious about it. What I mean by that is, I know I felt joy before, and I know that a past self knows what joy is. So I would anchor into that part. Like I know my inner child loves like licking a popsicle in the sun. That felt like joy to her. Can I anchor into that? Even if I couldn't access it from here, from this current self, could I bring in past self to relearn, right? To reconnect to that neurology of joy and strengthen it. So it felt inaccessible at times, 100%, but it was there. I just had to be intentional about cultivating it and connecting to it.
That makes sense. What does living in joy mean to you today? To live in a state of joy?
Living in a state of joy. I'm gonna say that I can't be in a state of joy at all the time
No.
because I'm human, because we're all human. And so, just a reminder to anyone listening to check your expectation, because when I say I'm living a joy-filled life, I'm not saying that I am filled with joy 24/7 or every day, right? I have days where grief comes in and, where anger comes in and frustration comes in, all of that, but I can still find pockets of joy. It just doesn't mean that I'm in joy, and we're not supposed to be in joy
No.
24/7 because all the emotions serve a purpose. So for myself, living a joy-filled life right now is living in gratitude for what I do have, what I can access, the capacity that I have, doing things that align. That was a big one for me. Does this life feel aligned? Does it feel authentic? I feel like all of those things weave into joy. And for those of you already know, I have a very, very deep anchor with faith. So for myself, I always talk about how the joy of the Lord is my strength too, is having faith. So joy means so many things. It's as simple as smiling, on a day-to-day basis, to having massive elevating experiences, to also being able to hold grief and deep, deep, deep emotion, um, and dipping my toe into joy at the same time. So it's Yeah, I don't know if that answered your question. It's all over the place. I don't know if I have a direct explanation, but this is joy. It's being able to do what I love and feeling good.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love that you expressed and point out that it's not to live in joy doesn't mean that every single moment of our life is joyful. That's not it at all. Because that would be, you know, that would be denying the very real feelings of the human experience, which is all of it. But you said to be able to hold the grief and still access the joy and dip into it. And so that's where I would really like to deep dive and talk about what does that look like or feel like and how do we do that? How do we hold and be with the grief, especially say in a moment where we are very much grieving something real, and intense, and then also still allow ourselves to dip into the joy.
All right. So that is an excellent question and something that I share about all the time, especially in my grief classes, that we can feel both joy and grief at the same time. And that goes for all emotions. Like we can feel gratitude and frustration, anger and shame, guilt, all of these emotions. We're not, it's not so black and white. And that's what I love about grief specifically is its complexity. And I'm going to throw in some Greek here for a moment because I am Greek. There is a beautiful word, my favorite Greek word ever. It's charmolipi. Chara, the first part, charmo, comes from the word chara, which is joy, happiness. Lipi in Greek means grief. So we have a word in Greek called charmolipi, which means simultaneously feeling joy and grief. If the Greeks created a word for it, trust me when I tell you, it's accessible. We're meant to experience both. And so, what do I mean by that? I'll give you a perfect example. Um, I know for many of us who are in deep grief, whether it's the loss of a loved one or the loss of health, the loss of ability, the loss of safety. I mean, so many losses, right? I love, even just the simplicity of grief as being the change we didn't want, but happened anyway. There are going to be a lot of emotions, right? Grief, but underneath grief, we have anger, shame, guilt, overwhelm, fear, all of those things. And so when we allow those to be there and build safety and capacity for all of the emotions, we actually build more capacity for joy itself. So that's something I want to talk about maybe a little bit later. But I wanted to start off by saying that. And when we talk about holding grief and joy at the same time, we're talking about experiences that we can kind of pendulate in. We might be in deep grief. I can't even tell you how many times I've cried about my dad, missing him and just being flooded with grief and feeling it in my mind and body. And then thinking about something funny, right? Or hearing something funny, or my mom will say something or will call a memory and we start laughing. And there's this moment of joy, appreciation, gratitude in the midst of grief. And it's supposed to be there. And I know, we were talking earlier about how we hold, a lot of us who are in grief can hold this shame and this belief that when I'm grieving, all my time and energy and force needs to be in grief, or I can't feel joy if I'm experiencing grief. It's not allowed, or it's not proper, it's not right. And that's not true. The truth is that they're supposed to go hand in hand. There's enough space for all of it. And when we can experience joy in the midst of grief, we start creating a wider, more broader, more full experience as human beings. And so, yeah, it might be a laugh in the midst of tears. I've cried and laughed at the same time. I think we've all experienced that. Or I have found a joy in a simple moment, a simple thing of like, wow, my house is quiet right now. No one's yelling, no one's screaming, and I'm just sitting here, sipping my tea. And I still feel the pain of my dad. I still feel the pain of decades, of a decade of chronic illness. I still feel the grief. The grief is allowed to be there. It doesn't have to be extinguished or go in order for me to access joy. And the joy that I now can access because I made room for grief is more abundant than any other joy that I've experienced. It's more pure, it's authentic, it's real. So, hope that I explained
That's
it a little
really
bit.
beautiful.
Yeah. I
Yes. But my question is how? Like, how do you suppose that you got to that place where you can say today that through the grief that I've held space for, I have a richer joy?
Yeah. So it started with building safety with emotion. Because let's think about it for a moment that our brain doesn't just perceive fear, anxiety, grief as dangerous, it can also perceive joy as dangerous,
Yeah.
right? And so when we can start to build safety with emotion, and where it lives in the body, because we know that emotion is also a body experience. It's not just in your head. You're going to feel it. If I were to ask you, what does anger feel like in your body? You're probably going to know it's like tension in your jaw, clenching of your, fists, your biceps, some tightness in your chest. What does joy feel like? Right? Oh, maybe it feels like there's an expansion. My heart space is opening up, feels warm and tingly. Maybe there's like a softening, or immediately I start to smile. I know what joy feels in the body, and it's that somatic signature of the emotion that tells my brain that this is what we're feeling. And so I started to get familiar with all of the different somatic signatures of emotion, whether it was anger, shame, guilt, grief, joy. Joy was scary to me for a long time. It was something that was in our culture. There's something cultural, and it's called fear of joy. It's called chara phobia. Chara means joy, phobia is fear. And so it's like if you're too happy, something bad's going to happen. And I know a lot of people in the community share this. And I'm like, another Greek word that explains us. And for myself, I had to build safety with joy again, and to say that even if life happens, because it will, it always does, joy is still accessible and allowed to be there. And so building safety, to answer your question, building safety with all emotions was the foundation for really experiencing the full capacity for joy as well. Because if I couldn't feel safe with grief, probably can't feel that safe with joy, because I, in my mind, had this belief that if I feel joy, it's going to go away. And then I'm going to feel grief, and I don't want to feel grief. So I'm just not going to feel anything at all. But when you build capacity for all of them, and we're talking anger, guilt, shame, embarrassment, frustration, like what a fear, even when you build and make space for that, guess what? You're also making more space for joy, for hope, for love, for all these different emotions. So that's why I'm so passionate about seeing and teaching that grief is a gateway to so many things, including joy.
That makes so much sense. What are some ways that people can begin to build that capacity to be with each of these emotions?
Beautiful question. It starts with just giving a little bit of dedicated time and attention to it. And what does that look like? It might look like recognizing that there is fear here, or grief here, or sadness. Where in your body does it live? Is that first question. Right? You might not even name the emotion. You're like, I don't even know which emotion I'm feeling. Okay. Where in your body does it live? While I'm noticing, and we go to sensation here, I'm noticing a sensation in my chest or my belly. Can you place your hand there and just again give yourself that compassion and let it know that it's allowed to be here? And that's the big thing here is
Mm.
this is allowed to be here. And I don't need to fix it, shift it, change it, get rid of it. I need to allow it and recognize that it is just a sensation, and that we all have them as humans. It's part of the human experience. So, where does it live? Place your hand there. Can I sit with this? Maybe in the beginning, it's going to be for 10 seconds. Maybe it's going to be for 30 seconds, right? And you're going to allow it. And you're going to sit in it. And yeah, it might feel uncomfortable, but we grow in that discomfort as well. And so it's slowly, incrementally starting to build safety with allowing and sitting with these emotions. And as we do that, right, maybe 30 minutes is 30 seconds is where you're at. Then you would want to kind of pause and bring yourself to safety, right? Maybe you're going to use one of our amazing nervous system regulator tools in there. Maybe it's just a matter of, orienting to your surroundings. Maybe it's asking the quick question of when am I? Where am I? And bringing yourself back to this moment. Maybe it's trying to look for the different shapes or colors in the room. Either way, we can uncouple from the limbic loop or response, and bring ourselves back to safety and say, wow, we just sat with fear for 10 seconds. 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and it gradually gets more and more. And that's one way that I approach it. And there are other ways as well, but I think that's a great way to start for anyone who's listening is like, can you do that with every emotion? I'm not saying in one sitting to go there and like, I'm going to do every single one, but I'm like, hey, if you're noticing that fear shows up today, can you get to know it? Can you find where it lives in your body? Can you even listen to it? Does it have something to say? And instead of getting rid of it and shifting it, can you tell it it's allowed to be here? That's where I would start.
Mhm. So, if somebody has a sensation, but they can't quite pinpoint what the actual emotion is, maybe because they've been like emotionally repressed or not connected to or in tune with, let's just say they feel the sensations in their body and they don't know what the emotion is. Do you feel like they even have to know what that, like name the emotion, or do you feel like they're more or less just have to be okay with allowing the sensation?
Yeah. So I am big on allowing sensations in general. We want to build safety with sensation, right? Whether it's an emotion that is creating this sensation or whether it's this story that we have. I'm not one who wants to get rid of. I am all about building safety with your experience. So yeah, I think you don't have to know the emotion. You're not going to always know the emotion. You're not going to be able to always name it. I think with time you will. I think you're going to get familiar, and as emotion in general becomes safer in your body, you'll be able to make that connection of like, I know when fear is here. I know when anger is here. But you can say, I feel this emotion. I know there's emotion here. And you can even guess, like, it might be guilt or shame, but it doesn't matter. It's allowed to be here.
Do you, through your experience, see a pattern of how specific emotions show up in our body, or is it very individual?
I see a bit of both. So I think that we all have unique experiences, right? Like our grief is as unique as our fingerprint is. And so is our emotional intelligence. But I do see some like general similarities and commonalities, right? So I do notice that a lot of the time grief can show up like in the throat, in the chest area. Anger I find can really show up with tension here, but also with constriction here. Worry and like shame is a lot of times in our bellies. But it might be different for everyone, right? In a sense. And that's why I always encourage people to get to know your somatic signature of emotion, right? And be curious. Just like it's like a practice of getting to know yourself better. How cool that I am going to start to understand what my body's communicating to me, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and without putting so much pressure, because I know I've learned the hard way that, and you already had mentioned this, like whether it's a sensation that's due to an emotion or story or something else, because I used to put a lot of pressure on myself that I needed to like really connect and understand what this sensation, what emotion is under this sensation. And sometimes it really wasn't like that complicated. Sometimes it was like a feed, just my brain stuck in a loop, a pattern, just, if there's a lot of people in the TMS world that just believe that sometimes the brain like creates pain in the body that's not necessarily tied to one specific emotion.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because it all does come down to building awareness and just building that connection and relationship with our body and spending time with it with curiosity.
Exactly, yeah, and I love, love, love just even just somatic tracking, building safety with sensation. I use that with a lot of my grief clients as well, and it's like, well, if they're feeling a sensation, well, what if we don't need to know exactly we don't h what if we can uncouple the story from the sensation?
Yeah.
What might that be like? And that's really a lot of the times with emotional work is we get so into the story and then obviously the story loops and we get the sensations and we're still stuck on the story and we're trying to fix the story. But your body just like, hey, I'm here. Um, can we sit with this? And so going into the body, building safety with sensation, emotion, experience, that's where we want that's key, right? Like that is my goal for everyone is like, well, can you feel safe with this? And, can we start somewhere with that? Doesn't have to be all or nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and because I think back on times too when I was experiencing a like, say, deep grief from loss, but then if there was a day where I would do something that was bringing me joy or making me happy, then all of a sudden I was experiencing all this shame because it felt almost, like, "Oh, I'm" like, I can't think of the word, but who am I to be enjoying this moment or having fun right now? It's almost like a slap in the face to the person that you're grieving, as if like you're saying you're like me losing you didn't matter enough that I'm here out here having fun. And as you're talking, I see how that is also just a story.
It is. You're
It's
right.
just a story.
Yeah, and that's such a good example, and I'll even, weave that into the chronic illness journey. I remember times where I would start to smile and feel joy, and then that part of me said, "Why are you feeling joy? We're not safe." Right? Or like, "We're not supposed to be people are gonna think I'm okay. People
Oh,
are gonna think
that
I'm
one.
fine." Right?
Yes.
You show it, and I would be conscious of that. I would know that story, and then I would be like, "Oh," and then it would turn down the joy. Right? And so then it became this, like I had to intentionally be like, but what if this is part of the healing as well? And what if I can still be healing and feeling joy? And what if I can still be grieving and accessing joy? It doesn't mean that, and I would even say it, I remember saying it to my husband, if you see me smile, it doesn't mean I'm fully healed. It means that I had a pocket of joy. And that was a part of me that just needed to be seen, to give that permission of I can feel joy while still struggling in chronic illness, and I did.
Yes. That's a big one. I'm glad you brought that up because that is a big one for us where it's like this fear. And I think when I've done inquiry with myself to understand where it comes from, a lot of time I feel like I thought that if I go do something that's joyful or try to do something that is fun, then people are going to think suddenly I'm just okay. And then I felt like they were going to have expectations of me that I couldn't meet,
Yes.
that I wasn't ready for. But so that's something I learned through that journey was like, oh my God, now I'm afraid to go do something fun or I'm afraid to be in joy because somebody might misinterpret what that means. And then they're going to place these expectations on me that feel heavy.
Yes, and I would say that that's pretty much what I was feeling as well. And that's why I felt I needed to communicate it clearly to my family and friends. It's like, okay, I can be having fun today, but I'm still very much, growing and healing. And I'm not going to take X, Y, and Z on because I had a great, a joy-filled day. And I think that took the pressure off of me to be like, well, I can feel joy and still be healing,
Yeah.
and that the joy is a part of the healing. What if that permission to say, "Oh, I need to do more of this because it's a part of the healing," right? And it doesn't mean that it equals to more responsibility or whatever, but what if this eventually increases my capacity for more? And I can decide when, if I expand to that place. So yeah. Yeah, yeah, I totally relate.
Yeah, that is it. Joy is actually a part of the healing. It is. It is. You have to be able to live in joy and figure out what does alignment feel like and authenticity and, create these pockets more and more throughout your healing experience and building it so that you can it's a part of healing. I just don't know how you could heal without that aspect.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel like there's so many people in our community that just, talk about how, there's 2 extremes. There's the brain retrainers who elevate all day long, and they're just constantly in joy, and they're bypassing all other emotions. 'Cause we know them. I was one of them for a while. And then
Same.
there's the other extreme who, can't access or they say, "Well, I can't access any joy. I'm X, Y, and Z, so I can't elevate, so I'm not even gonna try." You know? And there's this middle ground where there's space for all of it, the joy, the grief, all of that emotion. And, uh, and again, we build it slowly, right?
Yeah.
It's a matter of building that skill that we once had. It's there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Any final words on joy that you wanna share with anyone out there listening?
Yeah. I mean, think small. It doesn't have to be this big, expansive experience. It can start with like the sun on your skin that feels good for a moment, or your feet in the grass, or listening to some music. And take your symptoms with you. Right? Even if you have symptoms, you can access joy. Even if you have sensations, you can access safety. It's all a part of the healing. And as I always say, you can live as you heal and heal as you live.
I
Yeah.
love that. Yes, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. This was fun, and I am so grateful that I got to connect with you.
No, thank you for having me. This was such a refreshing and fun conversation.
Yeah, and I'll make sure that in the show notes there's links to your contact information and your program Haven.
Perfect. Thank
All right.
you.
Yay.
Open wide, the dark within my dog is where I found my light. The fruit became the doorway, and now it's open wide. The fruitful darkness is all around us. The fruitful darkness is all around us. The fruitful darkness.